Hello and welcome to Key Radio Live, Season 4, Episode 2, The Magic of Key.
Yes, and on the first day of fall, we are talking about the work that takes place in winter.
Yeah, it kind of happened this way, so you might have noticed we are skipping one to the Radiant season. We're going to put that one later in the season, a little bit closer to 1 remake. So we're talking about Kanon today instead, which is really cool because you have Manpig and I here, and we were just talking in pre-show. We have very, very similar views on this work.
Yes, I think this is very... I think Kanon is like the base standard I hold for Key because one, well, it's its first work, but two, it's also just... It has all the base appeals you will understand from the company. Like, Kanon's like the best way to go, hey, this is what Key's about, and I feel it's just a comforting thing to come back to.
It would be the gateway key work if not for the fact that the visual novel is hard to get running.
Hard to get running, and also there are a few smaller visuals that are probably easier to get into.
Right, but
get people into Key.
If someone's asking for which anime to get them into Key, I will point them to Kanon 06.
I think Kanon 06 is one of the best options. I would still also put Clannad there, but like Kanon 06 is definitely the easier watch.
That's what it is. Clannad is a bit more of a commitment. It's twice as long.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right.
Yeah, Kanon.
We have Utori is not here with us today, but they did give one talking point for us to talk about, which is the one like non-spoilery thing we'll get to before we get into the spoilers part of the episode. But they did want us to talk about the introduction of nostalgia into the Key magic formula. And here's the thing, Kanon's entire vibe, if you had to describe it in a word, I do think that word would be nostalgia.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. It's like, it is a product that was made in the 1999, right?
1999, yeah. It launched June 4th, 1999, and it is one of 3 Key games that was not delayed, which I just think is really funny.
Yeah, that is true, but it was released during that time, and it basically acts as like a time capsule of the city and the world of Asia during that time, and that's why I feel Kanon is such a comforting work, because it really feels like it just, due to the time it was made, it feels like a return to those years back in the day.
Yeah, and like if you go to that city where it's based on, it doesn't look like that anymore. So
nope.
It's a bit sad. So Hammy asked in the chat, what were the other 2 that weren't delayed? Little Busters and Lunaria. It's just those 3. Every other key work had at least 1 delay. It's definitely a bit wild.
Yeah, but nostalgia is not just a thing about Key Magic, but it basically permeates through all of Kanon, and ever since Kanon being the first key work, basically just paved the way to nostalgia being a permanent thing in a lot of key works after it. Like, even from old to new, nostalgia and just being comforted by memories is one thing that has just stuck with Key for a very long time, and it's probably its most major aspect of adding from 1.
Yes, and that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is one little bit of Key magic in Kanon that is not a spoiler that we can talk about. Yuichi is kinda sorta an amnesiac protagonist.
Kinda, sorta, but it's a complicated thing, but not...
It's a complicated thing that we'll get deeper into in the spoiler section, but it is a bit unusual that he just has an entire chunk of his memory completely missing. And we see it in the very first scene, whether you're reading the visual novel or watching actually both of the anime adaptations. The very first scene we see is Nayuki meeting him on the bench, where he makes a joke about not remembering her name, but really he doesn't have a lot of memories of being with this person. Like, it's a very different thing from like your normal childhood friend trope, or, you know, which is kind of what Nayuki is, even though she's his cousin.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things you need to think of, but the main thing is obviously to connect with the reader, but also add an era of history. That's where basically most of the mystery of Kanon's initial world setting comes from, is that, oh, we want to explore this town and we want to know why Lucci seems to have such a big disconnect from those memories back in the day.
Yeah, it's really sweet, and like it's something that's shown within, if you play the visual novel, within Kanon's choice system as well. And actually really laid the groundwork for Clannad's choice system, which I have said many a time on Key Radio Live I think is a work of genius. But it's kind of Kanon walked so Clannad could run in this regard. Nari said in the chat, Yuichi, LOL, I forgore. Yeah, pretty much.
He do forgore. That is a big thing about Kanon.
Yeah. So I was talking about Kanon's choice system, and Yuichi does get to do a lot of exploring around the town, which is how he meets the different characters. And Mai, for example, is a heroine that you actually can completely miss if you're not just in the right place at the right time, from Yuichi wandering around the town, exploring his memories. And it makes Kanon really fun as a game without being like unnecessarily frustrating like one's choice system. Because Kanon's choice system is complicated. You do have to pay attention, but if you pay attention, you will be able to do it without a guide, I think. In fact,
it's a proper adventure game.
Yeah, it's like if you're a little afraid of trying a key VN without a guide, this is one that I actually kind of recommend trying it that way, especially on a reread, because Kanon does not have a common route bad ending. No matter what you do, you will end up on a route. It's just a question of whether you'll end up on the correct route. Now, there are a couple of bad endings within the route, but if you get on the route and make a save, you're pretty much golden. It's fun.
Yeah, Kanon gives you a lot of exploration, and you get to figure things out on yourself, just like interacting with the characters and finding things. I think that's definitely something that's Key has gotten very good at, and has pretty much they've managed to keep a good balance for the amount of their releases, I'd say. And also the one thing that's like really important about Kanon is getting to learn about the world with the protagonist also in sort of a way. This is not the first key work where this kind of thing will happen. It's like, even though they managed to make it so despite not having seen this town and the protagonist hasn't, you both get this sense of familiarity and homeliness in all of these settings, regardless of what work you're reading.
Yeah, Utori just commented in chat. I'm going to read this real quick. They said, I'm so sorry I didn't make it today, but one thing I love about Kanon and Key Magic is that it manages to capture that beautiful feeling of nostalgia, which has become so important to the Key brand, that even when you break down the silly aspects of the plot, it still makes you emotional because of how you relate to that childhood nostalgia. Kanon is love, Kanon is life, and I second this so hard.
Yeah, same. It's just a comforting
to read. It's like, it feels like you're seeing magic when reading it, especially if you're reading it in winter.
Yes, it's just comfy.
Which is It's so beautiful. Ryan says Ryan's a newer member of Keyverse, and he actually shout outs to Ryan has a complete Kanon archive pinned in our Kanon channel with every release of the visual novel, so check that out if you're interested. And he says it was my first VN and I have no regrets. Two quick things. I want to point out a quote I read in an old forum on Kanon like 5-6 years ago that's kind of stuck with me about this VN. I read this quote even before I read the VN, but I completely agree with it. It aged well because it hasn't aged well.
Yeah,
and
no, you can definitely see that.
It's like, it's an old, honestly, when you look at the plot, it's an old middle tier VN from 1999 that hasn't aged very well, and yet it still manages to tell a beautiful story.
It's just comforting. Something about it is that it's old, but that's like its strength.
Yeah, exactly. So that actually kind of ends our non-spoilery section. So for those of you who are going to dip, I do want to point something out. If you are listening to the YouTube version of this podcast, you will be hearing a lot of Kanon Doujin music in it. I want to start including more Doujin music, and especially on an episode of this VN. Kanon got a lot of really, really good Doujin music, so don't be a stranger to the video description if you're wondering where some of these arrangements came from, and you're like, that's really cool, I want to check that out. So that's something that will be a thing in the YouTube version, but those of you in the live show will not hear it, I'm sorry.
It do be that way sometimes.
All right, we are going to get into spoilers now. If you have read or watched Kanon, you are clear to be here. The visual novel and both animes' plots are relatively the same, and what we will be talking about today is not specific to any one version. So if you've only seen the anime, you're totally fine to be here.
Yeah.
All right, which route do we go into first?
One thing for sure I want to buy you last. What?
Yeah. So let's get right in. Let's get right into Makoto, because I actually think this is probably the hardest one to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
My cousin Sexta Fox. It's actually
Let's
the
not
name
talk
of the
about.
sticker Brahms just posted.
I'm not gonna comment on the. I'm not gonna comment on that curse history, but what I will say is that
I'm pretty sure Kai is the one who named that sticker. Classic.
But yeah, the big thing about Makoto route immediately that most people who've read it know is that it's very, very bittersweet. It's probably the most bittersweet route that Key has made. Is before 1 and Moon, if you count a true ending, it is probably the most bittersweet and vague route ending that I don't think anything in this visual novel even matches.
Right. Well, it's really obvious in the 06 anime, because when you look at the ending of the 06 anime, she's the only one who doesn't come back and her problems aren't fixed. You know, because this is one that the anime specifically really says this is a sad ending. And I'm gonna be honest, I am a fan of how this goes. Not because I want Makoto to die. I actually really like Makoto. I am a fan of this because this laid the groundwork for a later key work that I won't spoil on the Kanon episode, but we will talk about it, and it was a very, very important learning experience for Maeda. And I think of the two routes in this VN Maeda wrote, this one is far better written.
I will agree with your comment on the other work. I do have some defenses for the other one, but I do think what Makoto Root does the best is that it has a new formula that is not replicated in Keyworks that much.
I would not go
Sorry.
that far. Like, the way I would say it is slow pain. And
Slow pain. Yeah.
slow pain, like a steady decline. And slow pain is something that we do see it in Air, we kind of see it in Kinen, and we really see it in Summer Pockets. But outside of those, you're right, it doesn't appear very much. Makoto route doesn't feel super slow to me because it's actually the shortest route in the game that's not IU. And then in the anime, she really got 4 episodes dedicated to the route, but it also has bits of common route peppered in. So
yeah,
it's paced well.
It's paced well, and also you regardless of how you feel about the character, you do get a good familiarity with Makoto throughout the story, and this mainly applies to the anime. Is that once she's gone, it feels like part of the story is missing, and that's because
absolutely.
Yeah, that's because there's this hole now.
Yeah, we gotta talk about the whole Kitsune thing, because, like, of course, Makoto is a prankster, haha, funny. She's actually a fox, and this is how the Kitsune is seen in Japanese folklore. But more important than that, the human as animal trope in Key was born here, and I still think this is a really, really good version of it because we get that pure, unbridled love that an animal can has when Makoto is in her decline, basically.
Yeah.
And the parallels start at the beginning when you first meet her, and they stick around all the way to the end. Regardless of how you feel about it, I think that is a very well-written route.
I would agree. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the main thing is that this is like a huge this was a huge step for the time. Just having the whole animal thing, and obviously not really knowing how that happens because, well, that's the main aspect of the root, is that it's magic in that we don't have an answer to why this mystical thing happened, but
that's
it
canon.
It's canon, and it leads to a very powerful story, and it's one of the few examples where the magic isn't the solution to the problem, but more of like sort of the problem. Well, not even that. It's like the whole thing happening to begin with is a miracle, but even every dream you have to wake up from it, and I feel like that the whole Makoto route is just letting go of this one miracle of having this person by your side, and watching that slip away from your fingers is so much fun and very fun.
It reminds me a lot, and like I knew this was going to come up on the podcast in many different episodes, but it's coming up for the first time here. I put key magic into 3 different categories, and I've mentioned this briefly on the podcast before, but it really relates here. Since this is the Magic of Key, Season 4 of Key Radio Live. Key magic goes into 3 different categories. 1, the magic is the setting, which is Little Busters and Angel Beats. 2, the magic is the plot, which is Air, Charlotte, Rewrite, things like that. And the 3rd one, which is the case here, the magic is the message, which is Kanon, Clannad, Summer Pockets. Kanon was really the one that set it up like this. The magic within each of the 4 routes with magic, Rip Shiori. We won't talk about her much today. I love her though. Shoutouts to Shiori. We love you.
She is a great heroine.
Yeah. But the 4 routes with key magic in canon are not super connected to one another, but they all fall into that category where the magic is important to the message, and that's definitely the case with Makoto.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Makoto, she leaves an impact. That's the one thing I'll say, is that she, like, regardless of what you feel, she leaves an impact, and I do, like, again, especially in the anime, you do feel like there's
Did you
so
watch
much.
the anime first?
I watched the anime first, and
If you watch the
because of
anime
that,
first, that's definitely going to be the case because her route is first.
yeah, and like when I think of Kanon, I very often think about Makoto as one of my favorite, one of the first heroines that comes to my head, even though she's not my favorite heroine. She's very memorable, and I feel like that is like one of the biggest strengths of the Makoto route, is just the way he utilizes his magic to make a memorable story that just sticks with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's very, very iconic, and especially coming off one, and one where things were relatively safe in terms of the magic. Makoto was truly a risk that, for the time, was really
Kanon
impressive.
in general
really
was
respectful.
like, yeah, definitely the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's get into Mai while we're talking about Maida. I love this route in concept. I hated it in the visual novel. I think it's just, in the anime is better in every way.
I will
Just
agree that the
straight up.
anime is better, but I don't dislike the version of the visual novel. Mai is a very funny heroine, and I like her a lot.
I
Like,
love
the big
Mai
problem-
herself. She is amazing.
Yeah, but I think the big thing about the Mai route is that regardless of the medium, I feel like the magic, the way he uses it here, is really well done. Because here, this is a full example of where the magic is the problem. There are ghosts in this. There's ghosts in the school. There are demons in the school. What is going on here?
All right, I'm gonna point this out, and actually this one thing actually might be a debate between you and me, because I actually don't know how you feel about this. This is, I am a fan of Kanon 02. The one thing it did that I think is inexcusable is make the demons visible. I hated that.
I don't hate it, but I do think it is not as effective as
it kind of defeats the purpose of the whole message of this route, being that the demons don't actually exist. Mai is creating them herself, and there's, I'm gonna get into this because this is really cool. There's a part in my route that you can get a couple of days onto her route, and then the game gives you an out. If you're reading the visual novel, there's one choice you can make that's really obvious, and I forget what the exact choice is. I'm gonna look it up because it's really important. Okay. There's an out on my route where Yuichi can decide he doesn't want to help Mai. He said, like, there's a spot where it's like, help her fight the demons or don't. And Yuichi can choose stop coming to see her after Mai says she believes she can beat all the demons. If Yuichi says no, you get a scene where he basically just berates her for causing all her problems herself. And he's really mean to her, and at the end of the scene she says, no, you're right, and you're off her route, and you'll never see her again. That scene,
Dang.
no one really gets it because there's no reason to get it. It's not a bad end. It just dumps you back onto the common route where you can then get onto either Makoto or Ayu, because their branches are later than Mai's.
Yeah.
But the fact that you
That's
can
interesting.
partway down her route and then get off it in that way it's amazing. So I'm gonna read a few of his lines. This is Yuichi. Oh, I give up. I can't imagine what basis you have for saying that. That being, I can defeat all the demons. You just want to think so, don't you? Mai says, I believe it. Yuichi says, then there's only one more thing I want to say to you. You're making all your problems by yourself. See you later. If you want to meet during the day, that is. I won't be coming here like this again. And then in monologue, not like she cares anyway. She never asked me to come. I don't see her trying to stop me. She doesn't try to stop me. She doesn't say a word. I turn my back on her and leave.
Dang. Harsh.
It's harsh, but he's not wrong.
He isn't. Because, as we soon learn, Maya creates these demons for herself. They are literally her internal demons.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, that is so Maeda.
That's it. It is very much this kind of like raw emotion kind of thing. Just like having flawed people, just having to confront the most like raw part of themselves. And I do think like that's the whole message of the route, is that Maya has a lot of issues. She has a lot of things. She's in a lot of senses stuck in her past, and she's trying to just fight demons instead of just let them lie and that's such a key message.
It's very key. It's very Maeda, and like a lot of Maeda's work, and we actually talked about this last week. So like, hear me out. Ikumi set the stage for Mai.
In a sense, now that you say that, yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah, no, I can totally see that.
Obviously, their stories are very different, but they both have a lot of internal struggles that they need to work out. They just have different methods of doing so, which are more fitting for their respective stories.
Yeah. They're both fighting something, and they're both trying to move on, or the message of their stories is overcoming themselves and moving on. And I feel like Ikumi's is a more detailed execution, but also at the same time, Maya is like a hero and Ikumi is a protagonist. There's different depth here.
Of course, yeah. Maya's allowed to have some help, whereas Ikumi had to do it all herself. Yeah.
And having Mai's, I like how with Kanon a lot of the problems, or this is like one of the biggest examples where the problems is caused by magic, but also the magic is like tied to a personal message related to the person. And this is something that I feel like is a thing that is something that I will want to come back to, especially in Kanon and maybe other works, but the magic is not just a plot device caused by let's all make everything happy. It's caused by a change of heart and a change of yourself, because characters change themselves and become better people. That's what causes the magic. That's what causes the miracle. Becoming a better person is what makes these miracles happen in Key. And this is something that Key will... They did this here first in Kanon, but they will continue to do it so many more times because it's such an important part of their storytelling, encouraging people to be better people.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just get this out of the way because it relates to something you just said. One thing that Key stories in general, but Maeda stories in particular, get a lot of flack for is the quote-unquote Deus Ex Machina ending. And I'm just going to throw this out here right now. That is not a thing.
Yeah, no.
Except in Harmonia, but we'll get there. Like, the Deus Ex Machina, by definition, is when it literally means God as machine in Latin. And it's basically where the day is saved by an otherwise unexplained event. or when magic is used to solve an otherwise unsolvable problem. And no keywork, and definitely not canon, is solved this way. And we'll definitely get to that when we talk about IU's route, but just it's one of like the quote unquote key tropes that I just think is completely false. I don't think Deus Ex Machina is a key trope at all. That's just me.
I don't either. I think that people who think that key relies on literal plot devices might be missing a bit of things in the work, because usually they're all tied. The magic is tied to the message. Yeah, they're tied to the message, tied to what these stories are trying to tell the reader. And in Mai's case, it's because Mai has a lot of demons, and she's not able to move on from them. It's only once she accepts herself that the problems are solved. She's healed. She's able to accept herself and forgive herself. And I think that's a very important thing that this route tells us, that regardless of what you think about the pacing, which is a very valid issue, the route's message is very important, and it's full
that's
key.
Why
like
I'm just saying here, for me, the 2006 anime version of this route, I think, is just about perfect. It fixed all the problems with the visual novel version, and honestly, it didn't actually change very much of it, which what that tells me is that the bones of the story were fine. It just needed more editing.
Yeah, no, I will agree with that, is that the 2006 anime version is definitely the best version, but I think the story in general has merit. Like
you get the Yuichi line that ties it all together, and it's probably my favorite Yuichi line. Lay down your sword.
Yeah, just
that's like a top 10.
Calm down.
Line.
Move on. Accept what's happened and just be content. Because in the end, once she's able to literally overcome her demons and accept them into her, she's able to move on and become a happier person and reach a happy ending that, I'm gonna be honest, fully deserved.
Oh yeah, Maya's a lovely person. She absolutely deserves all the happy endings. I want to read Spiral's comment here. I've said it many times, but the best use of key magic is physicalizing characters' inner psychology so it's visible. And this is like something that I would say almost every key work does in some form or another, but the ones that do it the most are Kanon, Clannad, and to a slightly lesser extent, Summer Pockets. Like those three are the ones that hit those the hardest. Mio route, yes, but it's an outlier in its VN. Which we'll definitely talk about on the Little Busters episode, and also in Little Busters Book Club, which, for the record, if you're interested in Little Busters Book Club, that will happen in May of 2024. So that's something to look forward to.
Hype.
All right. Yeah. Nayuki and Ayu, we can kind of talk about together since they're the exact same use of magic. Let's talk about Ayu's wish.
Ayu's wish. Okay, so this is the big mama. This is the quote unquote Deus Ex Machina, which, as we all know, is complete BS. Cause here's the thing about Ayu's wish, is that it's only received and through these characters' own paths. Like, it's something that is earned and given to Yuichi through each of the route because of what Yuichi has, how Yuichi has grown to value certain characters and value certain people in his life and wish for their happiness. Therefore, their happiness is given to them through Ayu's wish. That's what I feel, at least.
I can agree with that. So, to give a little bit of setup here, first of all, to mention, Nari. I hate you.
That's awful.
You're such an asshole. Anyway. Fucking hell. So I'll get into I cut something out, but I was berating Nari for a bit. I'll get into the childhood sections of the VN because if you're going down either the Nayuki or Ayu route, which are both written by Naoki Hisaya, which this was his first and last work for Key, by the way. But he eventually wrote one other VN afterwards and also wrote Crystar, which is very good. If you're heading down the Nayuki or the Ayu route, you will get in between almost every day these childhood sections with Yuichi and Ayu, of course. And during one of them, either the 5th or the 6th one, I can't remember, Yuichi goes through this whole thing. I can only grant you wishes that I can grant. And he gives her the little doll. The doll is just nothing. It's a talisman. It's a sweet little gift that he wins her. But the real thing here is I can only grant wishes that I can grant. When we are in the climactic seed of Ayu route and we get the sunset CG, and I'm gonna cry talking about it, but I don't care. We don't actually hear what her wish is. But the most widely accepted version of her wish, the most widely accepted, like, fan theory on it, and it kind of matches, like, with the Japanese with what her lip flaps are in the 06 anime that we see. I wish Yuichi was happy. And when you think of that as her wish, that solves it. Whoever he's with at the time, like whoever he's with at the time, whether he's with Mai, whether he's with Nayuki, you know, where she uses the wish to save Akiko's life, with Shiori actually, where she uses the wish to save her life in a way. If Ayu uses her wish to make Yuichi happy, then a miracle is what will make him happy. He wants the person he loves to be happy. And it actually really annoyed me on the first read that in every route except her own, we have this little scene with Ayu where we get a CG of her at the sunset where she says goodbye to Yuichi, and I'm like, why does this have to play in every route? But on my second read, after I knew the kind of twist that Kanon has with Ayu's wish, I loved that it was here because it shows that she really just more than anything else wants his happiness, and that's kind of one thing that makes Ayu just a really, really special character.
Yeah, the kind-hearted, selfless type of characters. It is a simple character, but it's very important. It's something that you will find a lot in Key. Kindness is a very good virtue. It's difficult, and sometimes you don't get much in return. But that's what makes characters like Ayu so special. Is that being kind to some people can cause miracles to happen and create even more smiles. We will talk about this more in Filibusters, but making someone happy oftentimes means making other people happy. That makes you happy. And in general, it's nice to
You sound like Komari right now.
That's what I'm referring to, is that by spreading kindness and spreading happiness to other people, your effect is not always going to be immediate. There's always a chance that by being nice, you can spread that kindness to other people around them and just make a more pleasant world for everyone to be in. So I think what Ayu's root and also the use of magic here is that it's just being it's a direct crystallization and visualization of what can happen if you choose to be a kind person. Like just making these miracles happen and changing people's lives for the better. It's just for the sake of the message. I feel like this works really well because Kanon is about treasuring memories and also making sure just those around you, you value what is around you. You don't take for granted the presence of other people, and you keep their memories in heart. Like the whole reason all this happens because Ayu never forgot Yuichi and always had her last wish there for his sake. Despite how many years went on, she was always there. And I feel like her wish being the thing that saves basically everyone in their individual route as well as herself in her route is just such a fitting tie in a bow when you finish the visual novel. Because just, oh, this girl has always been here for Yuichi and literally just she gave up so much, like something that literally
She
something
gave
that
her
would
last wish for him instead of using it for herself.
Yeah, it's such a small thing, but it created a miracle that brought happiness to multiple people, and depending on your route, that happiness spreads to those you care about, the heroine you care about.
Yeah, Ryan says
I agree.
This is
That's
why
why
playing Ayu's route last is important. I am like, it's not like rewrite or Summer Pockets level route order matters, but I find it weird that Ayu's route is not locked last.
Yeah, I agree. I fully
wish it
agree.
was,
I feel like
personally.
I was fitting to the last as well.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Manpig, you mentioned a little bit in pre-show, but we can get into it now. Why do you think the anime version of the ending is better than the visual novel version?
Yes. The main thing about the anime version that I prefer is the fact that the anime has a lot of new content at the end that continues off of it's basically they add more content to what was originally the Ayu route and put like an in-between scene where the wish happens, but not every single problem is fixed yet because, as we soon learn, the Ayu isn't dead, but she is in a coma. She has not woken up for many, many years, and while she uses her wish to bring everyone happiness, she's still asleep. Now, why is that the case? We soon learn that there's one thing that is preventing that, and I feel like this ties to Yuichi's character in a very genius way that the visual novel didn't take full advantage of. Yuichi's entire story through Kanon is the fact that he can't remember everything, and his memories are vague. And we soon learn through the events of Ayu route is that the reason he doesn't remember everything is because he found the memories of his past too painful. He saw Ayu get injured and he blocked that out of his memory because it was just too harsh for him to remember.
This, for the record, is not key magic. That can actually happen. But go on. I just wanted to point that out. But that is totally reasonable. That can totally happen.
Yeah, it can. It absolutely can. But this ties into the message of how even a sad memory that you might not want to look back on, it is important that you have it and be able to keep that in your heart for when the time is necessary.
Yep.
Because throughout everything that Kanon's past is shown is that there are a lot of sad events from that. Yuichi leaving town means a lot of the other characters they are lonely. Makoto, Mai, they both are affected by Yuichi's leaving of the town. Nayuki, poor girl, oh my god, she did not deserve anything that happened. It was just really bad timing. And of course, Ayu's near-death scenario, they're all just really harsh things to look back on that for a lot of people would leave a very black spot on their heart. But you have to keep these memories with you because you never know when memories make up who you are. You never know when these experiences will come in useful because your experiences and your knowledge that you go throughout life, it's all important. You need to have all that because that makes you who you are, and it changes you into it helps you learn. And once Yuichi learns this, he remembers his past. The thing that wakes Ayu up in the ending is him going back to those very painful memories that he blocked out of himself and remembering what he lost in both a metaphorical and literal sense. Like, he did have to find the one hair clip that, or the hairband that he wanted to bring Ayu. But metaphorically, I feel like this represents Yuichi finally accepting these painful memories are necessary for him to live in the present, and that he can't run away from them. He shouldn't try to bury them away and try and forget about them. He has to
remember
wear
your
these.
Past.
Remember your past to build.
Side note: there is and then I'll let you finish. There is a fantastic Nakige that's not made by Key that covers this topic really well. If you know, you know. Anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, the main thing is that Kanon is a story about where Yuichi finally accepts his the things that he's lost, and he uses that to finally give Ayu the gift that he wanted to. And after he makes the choice to remember and he's able to remember, that's what gives him the final happy ending where Ayu wakes up. And I feel like that is such a perfect finale, like final point to his character that the visual novel never really touches.
One thing that you mentioned that is like not quite how it went is there's not actually any new content in the ending of the anime. What instead you have here is all of the epilogues of all of the other routes are all put into episode 24. So what that really means is that, like you said, we have a bit more time in between Ayu's third wish and Ayu waking up. So you get some breathing room to check in with the other girls, but nothing is really new here because, and this is the genius of it, Ayu's third wish is exactly the same in the visual novel as it is in the anime. Because in the anime, when it's a linear story, Yuichi makes connections with all of the heroines in one timeline. So if her wish is still, I wish Yuichi was happy, then everyone's happy.
Yeah.
I love Kanon. It's so good.
It's such a clever way. It's just one of those things that was like, that's just it's a clever way of doing it, but it's also because the original wish was so versatile that it just still fits perfectly and without having to change the story. Because yes, when you make these connections and have these relationships with people and become happy, like the wish to give happiness to people gives it has a gigantic ripple effect, and I really like this about Kanon.
Yeah, it's an amazing work. We didn't talk much about the s4e2 anime. It does do all of these things, and it's really charming to look at. It's got a great soundtrack, but in terms of like the plot, it is the shortest of the three adaptations, so it is the weakest. It's not as bad as some people say. It's definitely worth a watch. Just maybe
I would agree, yeah.
Just maybe not for your first experience.
Mm-hmm,
For
absolutely,
your
yeah.
first experience, go with one of the other two versions. But if you've already experienced the other two and are looking for more canon content, Kanon 02 is actually really good. Hot take, I like it more than Kiyoani's Air anime.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think these anime are fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else to add?
Let's. I think we just do closing thoughts that
Yeah.
at least on my end, I feel like the magic of canon is like it is sort of like a capture it all of what Key has to do, what Key does with his magic. It is the message in that the magic is used to send a message of treasure memories, and spreading happiness is something that can, by making someone happy, you can also make those around you happy. And I feel like giving that to other people and showing that in a literal sense through Ayu's wish is one of like, it's such a key move. Magic is also, what was the three things again? Like magic is the message, magic is
the plot, and magic is the setting.
Magic is the setting. The setting isn't as apparent, but you can get sort of like a foreshadowing of what the events and the world of Kanon through the City of Snow. The City of Snow is a very memorable setting. It's not like a whole magical play, but you get such a big impression, and the City of Snow, it just has such a memorable allure to it that just keeps you stuck in it. And the whole thing about the City of Snow is learning the past and figuring out what happened. And I feel like that's so intrinsically entwined with what makes the magic itself work, that you can see how this grows into other stories that we'll later talk about, where it more expands on how magic can be used in other stories through the setting. And my memory is horrible. What's the last one again?
Oh, on magic is the plot, which is actually something that kind of comes up a bit in my and Makoto route, but it's not as deep as how it will be when we talk about summer route next week, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's like once we get Yuichi Suzumoto in here, that's when like we're really going to talk about like plot-based magic, and it will come up even more when we get into the key works by Romeo Tanaka. But today's magic was like a little bit of we had Maeda and Hisaya as the writers on Kanon, and though they use magic differently, and though there were communication problems between the two of them on this work, I do still think that the routes do kind of fit together, and Kiyoani, bless, did a little bit of extra work just to make everything mesh that much sweeter. The bones of this story were there from the beginning. It was a really good story. Could it have used some more time for editing? Yeah. Does that make me like it any less? Not really.
Yeah, no, I feel like Kanon is a really, really... It's a story that is dated, yes, but also holds up really well. And it's just a nostalgic time capsule of the era that has really powerful messages, a very memorable setting. And God, it's just such a nice, comforting work to go back to, even regardless of how many times you would experience it. It's just warm and comfy.
Yeah, it's great. All right, so that's the magic of Key and Kanon. Next week, we will be talking about Air. We'll do one episode on Air, and then after that, we will do 3 episodes on Clannad. Because Utori and I have a lot of things that we needed to talk about that have been a long time coming on Key Radio Live. Because we have not done a lot of deep diving into Clanad because it hasn't had a book club yet with us. So that's what's coming up. And on that, again, check out the video description if you want to know where the Kanon Doujin music you heard in this episode comes from. And see you next week for Air. Good night, everyone.
Good night.